Hi, welcome to the Week 10 lecture. This week we're going to focus on elite netball and the psychological issues that can affect athletes. Specifically, we're going to look at intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, the effect stress and arousal have on performance, and athlete burnout. Motivation plays an extremely important role in the psychology of a modern elite netball player. The attribution theory, first developed by Heider, is a cognitive approach to motivation. It assumes that people try to explain, understand and predict events based upon their cognitive perception. Two significant aspects related to netball players' motivation are intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is where an athlete is motivated by internal factors and exhibits a high level of self-determination. Intrinsically motivated athletes are not driven by external rewards, but are driven through a desire to learn new skills and ways of accomplishing tasks. On the other hand, extrinsically motivated athletes are those who are driven by external factors and rewards. Examples of rewards include awards, money, social recognition and trophies. When working with elite netball players, it is important for the support staff to understand each player's individual motivation styles. Liz Ellis and Catherine Cox are two experienced members of the Australian netball team who have differing motivational styles. Ellis believes she is an internally motivated player who draws on past personal successes on court to motivate her. On the other hand, Cox admits that she is motivated by awards, prize money, trophies and fellow teammates, displaying an intrinsic characteristics. By understanding their motivation styles and tailoring programs to match, the coaching staff can get the best performance out of their athletes on a regular basis.
Anxiety, arousal and stress play a vital part in an elite netball team's preparation and game day performance. In a competitive situation like a netball game, the players will react differently in terms of anxiety and stress. The term anxiety refers to a player facing an uncertain existing threat which usually occurs following appraisal and coping with resources. According to the appraisal system, there are two different types of players, known as the primary and secondary appraisal players. Primary appraisal is when the athlete determines if she has a personal stake in the outcome, whereas secondary appraisal is when the athlete evaluates her personal coping resources to deal with the competitive situation. An example of an athlete with a personal stake in an outcome could be a new member to the team. Depending on her performance in a specific game will depend on whether or not she is selected to be a part of the Olympic team. A secondary appraisal netball athlete is one who evaluates whether she copes with the pressure associated with being selected to represent her country. Some elite netball players face competitive state anxiety before every game. This is defined as pre-competitive state anxiety and has specific factors that can destroy the player's game. The fears this type of player faces is fear of performance failure, fear of negative social evaluation, fear of physical harm, and disruption of well-learned routines. Perfectionism is sometimes a positive adaptation for a player to undertake. There are two different types of perfectionism, normal or neurotic. Normal perfectionism, as the name suggests, is possessed by highly motivated athletes. These athletes strive to play to the best of their abilities. However, they do not analyse their poor performances, whereas neurotic perfectionism is destructive personality characteristics. The two different types of anxiety that face an elite netball player are cognitive anxiety and somatic anxiety. Cognitive anxiety is defined as a player being anxious before a competition and it remains high until the game is finished. Somatic anxiety, on the other hand, starts at a low level and then increases as the competition is becoming closer, but then withdraws when the game begins. The performance of an elite netball player is vital, so it is important that the team understands ways to minimise and cope with stress and anxiety. The Australian netball team has developed strategies that they believe minimise the effect of stress and anxiety on their performance, therefore increasing arousal. One of these strategies employed is to have a group of senior team members mentoring the younger generation of players coming through. They believe by that the senior members being a part of that individual's game preparation, they can reduce the effects of stress and anxiety.
In today's society, where an enormous emphasis is placed on winning, athlete burnout is a common psychological effect. Burnout in sport and exercise is defined as psychological syndrome of emotional or physical exhaustion, resulting in sport devaluation. It has been identified that burnout is a multidimensional phenomenon that has many different causes. However, as identified by Silver's training stress model, one of the main factors is stress. In an athlete's pursuit to break into an elite level or maintain performance at an elite level, it is possible for them to overtrain or overreach. Overtraining is where the athlete trains beyond the level that is ideal for maximum benefit, while overreaching is a short-term form of overtraining. The main component of both of these principles is stress. Silver's model suggests that if a negative adaptation to training stress takes place, the athlete will experience a lag in training gain.
With the introduction of the ANZ Trans-Tasman Netball Series this year, netball has seen a significant rise in sponsorship and media attention. With this increased media attention comes amplified pressure on the athletes to perform at an acceptable level to maintain their position within the team. This increases the media attention and causes pressure on the netball players, which could lead to an increase in the athlete's stress levels, as well as the likelihood of suffering from overtraining and eventually burnout. With the intention of reducing burnout, while still creating healthy competition, it is important that the training staff within each club monitors athletes' training levels. As elite netball is not a full-time commitment, players have to balance their lives to ensure maximum performance on game day. Activities that can influence an athlete's motivation and potentially lead to burnout include the attributes of the individual, his or her occupation, family commitments, environmental factors, and time constraints. Through finding a balance between these factors, the athlete can reduce stress levels, increase motivation, and therefore reduce the likelihood of suffering from burnout.
Thank you for attending this week's lecture. Be sure to join us next week when we discuss drug abuse in sport and exercise.